Look, I'm a Zionist VC, and I love working with Israeli startups. We've been very successful with several of our portfolio companies, Israeli startups. We have invested in one right now, Palohard, which is based in Tel Aviv, and in Palo Alto. We helped a company called Check, which was originally Page One's based in Kfar Saba, and also Palo Alto sell to Intuit for $350 million. And this is a very successful program for us. So we're looking to invest in more Israeli VC startups. First of all, can you hear me? Is this okay? I know it's a little feedback. Yeah? Can you guys hear up top there? Yeah? Yeah? It's all right? Yeah, okay, great. So it's about the art of building billion-dollar businesses, and I'm going to start with a little bit of a background so you can see the successes that we've had to date. At Maven Ventures, we're really focused on consumer software as well as autonomous technology. That's kind of a broad stroke of what we're looking to invest in. Consumer software is very broad, and I'll go through some of our companies in just a minute. And the reason I mention it is because I'm happy to stick around after for a half hour or so to chat with you very briefly to hear what companies you're doing if you think it's a good fit for us. But I'll just be very honest, if you're working on a SaaS enterprise cybersecurity big data play, it's not a good fit. So just, I can't help you there. But if it's some kind of consumer software or autonomous vehicle technology business, we're very interested to take a look. We've had these 5 successful billion-dollar businesses. As you can read there, the most recent one was Zoom. Does everyone use Zoom.us? And if you don't, you should replace Skype or whatever else you're using for video conferencing because it's great and it's free and you'll love it. We just raised $100 million from Sequoia at a $1 billion valuation. And then you'll see the other companies up there, and I'll talk about Cruise in a little bit. Here's a few more of our startups, and I won't go through every one of these, just a few of them to point out the kind of companies that we love to build. You'll see AngelList on there. You guys are familiar with AngelList? Yeah, and if you're not, you should, because that's where startups live. They're doing great. That will probably be my 6th unicorn, is my guess. We obviously mentioned HelloHard, Neighborly, it's a great company. Altspace in VR, we love VR. We're investing in VR, we're investing in e-health still. We're looking to invest in esports as well, if anyone's doing anything interesting there. Embark is a really interesting company. Embark is self-driving truck technology. We just launched, you can do a search after to see what we're doing. It's freeway exit to freeway exit, self-driving trucks. That is a $1 billion business idea for sure. And then a few others in that space. Okay, we're going to do number 1, and this is the first 2 are the most important, and it's probably stuff you've heard. So I'm going to spend time on how we think about it. I think numbers 3, and the balance are going to be the ones that you haven't heard as much. So a vision worth fighting for, and what does that mean? And for us, it's the most important thing. And then the second one is team, right? So the idea and the team. But the vision worth fighting for is more than just an idea, and this is really important. We never invest in just a team looking to do something with great technology. We think that it's critical that you have a big vision worth fighting for from the beginning. And I'll give you an example. You look at a company like Facebook and you go, wow, look how successful that was. I mean, how lucky were they to, essentially get everyone around the world together. I mean, I met Mark Zuckerberg from the very beginning. We tried to buy his company when I was at Friendster. I flew him out from Facebook. It was just him and a couple people. And from day one, he had a vision to connect the world with Facebook. And that was from day one. He had a little blue book, he had all how it was going to work. It's a pretty audacious goal for a couple of 18-year-old kids in Harvard. But when you have a vision worth fighting for, you can actually execute a unicorn exit, right? And it's critical. And I think one of the things I want to bring as I speak to Israeli entrepreneurs is this notion that you should be thinking bigger, right? And it's hard to do. It's hard to do, but we were talking earlier, I think that there's the culture of chutzpah, for some reason, hasn't translated to startups. And I don't understand why. Instead of trying to build a small piece of the technology pie, think big. Why can't we build the next Facebook from Israel? We can. It will happen, right? I mean, look, the news yesterday with Mobileye is fantastic. I think that gives you the sense that these $15 billion exits can happen from here. And there'll be a lot more of them, I'm sure of it. So with Cruise was a company that was building self-driving car technology. What an audacious idea just 3 years ago. It seems like so much has happened since then, especially with the Mobileye news yesterday. But just 3 years ago, it was Google. They were the only ones doing anything. And at the same time that Kyle, the founder of Cruise, was thinking about self-driving cars, I had the same idea. I was wondering, why is it just Google? And really, is it 2030 or 2050? Is it possible it could happen much sooner? And so if it's going to happen sooner, why should it be Google? It should be a startup to do it. And very fortunately, I was able to meet Kyle. Now, when you think about a vision worth fighting for, is this really a problem that's worth fixing, right? And the truth is, when I was really digging into self-driving car technology, autonomous vehicles, it became very clear to me that this is a massive idea. In fact, I'm telling you, it's the most transformative technology in our lifetime, maybe second to the internet. And by the way, if you haven't been convinced yet that it's happening soon, you should be convinced now. It is coming much, much sooner than you think. And here's why. First of all, we're going to save 1 million lives a year with self-driving car technology. Today, 1 million lives are lost because we make accidents driving cars. That shouldn't happen. It's the #1 killer for kids and teenagers today. That's going to go away. We're never going to have to sit in traffic anymore. It's going to be amazing. Imagine a world where there's only self-driving cars, self-driving Ubers. By the way, if there are any questions, I'm going to do questions after. So just keep. But the questions and answer, I'm happy to get pushback and have discussion with you and argue with you about it. It's all good. But let me just go through why I think this is going to happen, and I think you'll be convinced. No more traffic. Imagine you have a half-hour commute or an hour because of the traffic between Herzliya and Tel Aviv now. Who cares? You can do a Zoom video call, get work done. You can watch your Netflix. You can take a nap, right? The world that I envision is a world that you'll never own a car again. You never have to pay for a car. You don't have to have a parking spot. You have to look for maintenance. Your car breaks down. Who cares? It's someone else's. I just rent. I just push a button and it takes me from here to there. It's going to be a great life. It's going to be safer. It's going to be more efficient, more productive. And it's going to service 25% of the world's population that can't drive today. Listen, we have an aging population in America. People are living longer. It's scary to think that a bunch of 80, 90, and 100-year-old people should be driving a car. It's also a shame that they wouldn't be able to get around. How about people who are blind, who can't drive? How about folks with disabilities? This is going to be transformative, and it's happening. It's going to happen much faster than you think. So, clearly big vision worth fighting for. Now I needed to find the team. And number two, is the team. So Kyle was the founder, and Dan, and I'll give you a little bit of background about them. You see the picture over on the left, that was Kyle as a teenager. He was basically trying to build self-driving car technology before he got into MIT with his toys. So this is something he was passionate about. We love passionate founders. He happened to have gotten lucky and joined this gentleman, Justin Kan, who started Justin TV, which pivoted into Twitch and got acquired by Amazon for $1 billion. So when I met with him, I said, "Why? You're a gamer." He said, "Nah, that was lucky. Now I have enough money to do what I really want to do, and that's to bring self-driving cars to the world." So that got me excited. I love the passion. He also happens to be technical, and it's really important to have technical founder. And we've also done a lot of research in our companies, and we find that the most successful teams we find are usually founding teams of 2. Now we've done investments with founding teams of 1 and 3, and I can get into detail later if you want to know why we think 2 is the best, why usually 3 and 4 end up being 2 in a very messy way. So in this case, it was a good fit, and his co-founder, Daniel, was his business partner and handled all the PR and marketing, hiring, that stuff that wasn't around product and coding. Daniel happens to be the younger brother of Justin Kan, so it was there's a trusted partnership there too, and comes from good entrepreneurial genes. So met the team, we led, we participated in the seed round, and then we helped them build. That's a picture of me and my daughter taking one of the first self-driving car trips ever. She was very brave to come with me on this, and it worked. It was awesome. And it was safe though, so don't think I'm not crazy. And if you look on top of the car, there was a little hardware piece here. And I'm going to point that out. At the beginning, we had a very different business model. The idea was we're going to take your existing car, make them retrofit to make them self-driving. And so here was the pitch. You have a nice $70,000 Audi. We're going to take this device that we're going to charge you $10,000 for. We're going to drill a hole in your roof, and we're going to make it self-driving. Okay, you can imagine it didn't go over very well. So, sometimes you have to pivot, right? And in this case, it was a really bet the company decision, right? We realized that business wasn't going to work. We just raised a big Series A. We participated. I was on the board, and I said, look, if we know it's not going to work, let's figure something else out. And what Kyle realized is he has an amazing software team building great software. Let's forget about the hardware. And once we did that, everything changed. And we really kind of pivoted more to be more of an enterprise play. And we were talking to all the big OEMs, and then one thing led to another. And within a couple of months, in case you missed it, GM bought Cruise for over $1 billion. And that never would have happened if we had stayed with that initial plan. Everything changed when we became a software company. And by the way, Kyle had this other big vision, which we fully supported. When we realized that with our technology, we could actually become self-driving Uber before Uber could get to it, that was a really interesting idea. The only way a company like Uber loses this $100 billion market opportunity is if someone beats them to autonomous driving. And shortly after we came up with the idea, it became clear that Travis had a similar idea, because Uber went out and bought the Carnegie Mellon team, they bought Otto, they invested $700 million into buying Otto. So they realized the only way we lose is if someone beats us to self-driving cars. And so we were on the right path. And what we decided was, although we thought we could build an independent $100 billion company, partnering with GM was going to get us there faster. And look, you never say no to lightly to $1 billion offer in just two years. And it was a really big exit. It was the 7th largest exit. It's actually number 3 if we reported the proper number of that year. It was also one of the fastest exits ever to $1 billion. In good company there with WhatsApp and Instagram. So then talking about the team, in addition to folks like Kyle and Dan, and Kyle was pretty experienced. We'll take a risk on some young entrepreneurs too. We think that having experience is really helpful. We love seeing that. But in this case, we just recently, our last investment in Fund 2 is a company called Monkey. Ben Pasternak. I mention this because it's not as shocking anymore, but it's still a little shocking when you hear. Ben was 17 when we invested. He dropped out of high school. His partner was 18. He's from Australia, lives in New York. He actually visits Israel. There's a connection with him and his family in Israel. And this was his third company. His first company, he raised $1 million at 15, it failed. He raised another $1 million at 16, it failed. The third one, what he started building was very interesting to us. He started building this new video communication platform for his generation, for teens. And we love this vision, right? By the way, he's a great founder, a product focused person, and his co-founder is a great technology leader. So we love that mix. And his vision was huge, which is he wants to connect his generation using video technology that's never been done before on mobile. And if in fact you can get the teens from around the world talking to each other, meeting each other, that could really be transformative. And we think we can build a new communication platform around that. It's doing well. It's the top 5 or 10 app in the App Store. It keeps growing. Now, team and vision worth fighting for. Those you've heard. Now let me get to some that you may not think are as important. But every one of these are absolutely critical to your success. And I start with this one, not because it's the third most necessarily, because it's maybe the one that you think least about. Every one of the companies we invest in, we sit with them and we help them articulate the culture and the values of their business. And so what does that mean? Even if you're just 2 people or 3 people on a founding team, or if you're a team of 5 or 7, there is a way that you work together. That's the values and the culture of your company. And it's important to have that discussion. It doesn't have to be a 3-day seminar. Have a couple hour discussion about how you like to work with each other. Is this an open environment? Do we get in at noon and leave at 2 in the morning? Like, how do you guys like working together, and what's the environment you want to build? And the reason you do that is, first of all, to make sure you're on the same page, okay? And then, second, when you're hiring your next level of employees, hire for those values and culture first, before skills. Because if the people don't fit in your culture, it's not going to work. And it's going to actually be such a strain on your startup, it could actually explode your startup. And we've seen this happen over and over again. The 4th, 5th, and 6th engineers just, they looked amazing on paper, they were great, but they're just not a fit for this business. And it creates so many problems trying to get rid of them. So think about it. Now in this case, I showed an example of Zappos. This was a shoe delivery business. But they built this incredible culture of delivering happiness. And it really set them apart. This was the thing that made them the $1 billion exit to Amazon. This is what we did at Maven. We wanted to actually do our own values and culture, and so we struggled with this, and we thought about what do we stand for? And you could see, we don't want to, it's an open collaborative place, no jerks. And we put this up on our website, and it was interesting. We hired our first, our third employee, the first person since we put it up, and Robert's been great, and we asked him, what sort of spoke to you about Maven? He said, I read your value statement on your website, and I said, that speaks to me. That's a place I want to work, right? And it's so important for you guys to take the time to think about doing this. Most companies don't ever get to this until they're much, much larger, or they never get to it. Okay, let's talk about product market fit. So now that you've got a team, the vision, you've got your values and culture, and you got this product, before you start thinking about growing the business, and again, my lens is always consumer software, but this also could apply to enterprise software. Before you start getting new customers, make sure you have product market fit. Sometimes we have a great team with what we think is a great vision worth fighting for, but it's too early, or in fact, it wasn't a very good idea. I'll actually give an example of that. And that's okay. I did already with Cruise, right? The first idea, we didn't find a product market fit. We were onto something. The big vision was there, autonomous driving, but actually retrofitting your car with a piece of hardware was not the right product market fit. And if you don't see that right product market fit, figure out, make a pivot, do something. Now, when you see the product market fit, and people always ask me, well, what does that mean? So I'll talk about on the consumer software side. With Monkey, for example, we have millions of people, teams now using it. So we're onto something. We know something's happening. But I get excited when I see that we have 100,000 coming back every day, 3 times a day. That's Snapchat, right? In that case, they were 18 times a day, right? And so in your particular business or industry, product market fit might mean something different. In some ways, you kind of know it when you're there. And more importantly, you know when you're not there. And don't fool yourself to think, the customers haven't figured out yet, they're gonna get there. Be really honest with yourself. Now, when you find product market fit, you can start thinking about growth hacking. When we put this picture up here, because it's a reminder that we're not trying to trick anyone. It's not a goldfish being a shark. It's really not about these tricks of the trade. It's more about how do you help your product, your business sell itself? How do you get those thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people who love your product to sell it for you? Right? And there's a lot written about how this can work. I'm not going to get in great detail. If you want to talk about specifics on growth hacking, I'm happy to do it. But I do have this chart here, which I think is a nice overview. And there's a lot of these on the internet. There's so much written about growth hacking now. But in the last 5 years, it's become its own big trade and business. But I'll go through the things that we think are important. So obviously, the top of the funnel is acquisition, right? How do you acquire your customers? We love businesses that have free customer acquisition. We don't spend any money acquiring millions of customers on Monkey. We also have another app that we've helped start, which is called Sunshine. Sunshine's a new weather app. It's actually a really interesting weather app because we're using your phone as a barometer. So within 48 hours, we have the most accurate weather data in human history. We also, it's like Waze for weather, so we have 20% of our Sunshiners inputting what the temperature's like, or is it raining, is it feel cold, is it windy? So you can imagine, now it's mostly in the United States, but soon it will be worldwide. We don't guess there's no more guessing. It will rain tomorrow at 3 o'clock. That's a game changer, right? We don't realize that the weatherman's been lying to us for years and years, right? So what have we done for growth hacking there? Well, the customer acquisition is free. We get promoted by Apple in the App Store. We're top in the rankings, so people come in. And then we've also had people who use the product recommend it to their friends. And those are the best businesses that we love to invest in. And the same thing with Monkey. The ones that sell itself, you don't have to spend money on, you can actually build these businesses without focusing on the bottom of the funnel revenue for a while. And that's how you end up building the Instagrams and the Facebooks. And I know it's a little bit foreign for Israeli startups to think that way, because I know you guys have in the past traditionally had a lot of pressure to figure out that product market fit and how do you make revenue right away. And that's okay for some businesses. I'm not saying that's wrong. But there are also great consumer businesses that you don't have to think that way. And if you think you have one like that, you talk to me. I'm happy to put in $1 million or $2 million until we get to scale and we can start making a lot more money, right? When I'm at Sunshine, they didn't have to pitch me on the revenue model. I'm like, listen, at scale, if we have 10 million Sunshiners who love this product and use it every day, We have a $1 billion business. IBM just paid $2 billion for Weather Channel data. Like, this is a big, big business at scale. So all I care about is, can we get to scale using some of these techniques without spending a lot of money? So acquisition is the top of the funnel. Activation is the idea where now you've got people into your product, making sure that they actually register and do what you want them to do, right? And there's 15 steps within that, right? And then the next piece is maybe the most important, the retention or the engagement. Right now that you've got them, they've signed up or done what you want them to do, how engaged are they? How often do they come back? How long do they spend using the product? This also goes back to product market fit. You have a better sense of product market fit when you have highly engaged subset of users, okay? And then the next one is referral. Now that you've got them, they love it, and they're using it all the time, make it easy for them to tell their friends in the world about it. And it's not just like post on Facebook, but really think about how your product works and how you can make it work better by having their friends join, right? I mean, like Facebook's the classic example. It's a much better product when all your friends are there. And in the beginning, when they were just starting, and I was early at Friendster, the idea was really, if 10 people bugged you to join this thing, you're finally going to join it, right? And then you're onto something special. And then finally we have revenue, and it's not that it's the least important, but in the kind of businesses that we build, we like to do it later on. It could be a year from now, it could be 2 years from now. It's when you know you've got the top of the funnels working, then you can turn on the revenue model, and it's really explosive. So a little piece of advice on growth hacking. It is really important when you start looking at the engagement, and in particular, in top-line customer acquisition, to think about the one metric that matters. Almost every great consumer software company has that. And I'll just use the one example with Facebook, because they were really the first. I will give them credit for starting this notion of having a growth person, a growth hacker, a growth team. The first growth hacker at Facebook was Andy Johns. He's a friend of mine, and he's also a mentor at Maven. We have 20 mentors who are like expert growth hackers that work with our startups. And Andy was telling us that, from the very beginning, Mark Zuckerberg was very smart. He looked at what was happening, and they realized that if you had 7 friends within 7 days, you're hooked. You're a lifelong customer. So what did he do? What any smart person would do. That's what we focus on. Andy, your job is to make sure that that's what we do. And you're going to work with every person and every engineer. And if you're having any pushback, you talk to me, because we're focusing on that. And in the beginning of the business, it was so powerful, and it just worked. And they kept growing and growing. They still are growing. It's amazing. Now, they have hundreds of people on their growth team now, right? And I do want to mention one thing that's maybe not so obvious about growth teams and growth hackers in general. You don't have to be super technical. You do have to be someone who's willing to pay attention to detail. Andy Johns lives in spreadsheets. By the way, he went from Facebook to be the first growth hacker at Twitter, and then the first growth hacker at Quora, and now he's at Wealthfront. So he's had a nice career. And what he does is he spends his time in spreadsheets looking at detail, right? It's not necessarily the most glamorous job in some ways, but if you're attention focused and you're doing these experiments and you're seeing what's working and you keep doing that and you cut off things that are not working, and then you have a team of engineers and product guys working with you, you could be a very, very successful growth team. I'll mention one thing about LinkedIn that one of our mentors is Elliot Schmuckler, and this was an interesting, he pointed out something. He was the first growth hacker at LinkedIn. He helped grow the company from 0 to hundreds of millions of LinkedIn members. And what he shared with us was really interesting. It was very counterintuitive. And it's something that I never forgot, because so what he was saying is, we had these hundreds of thousands, millions of customers that came to LinkedIn and left. And we were so focused on getting them back. And it wasn't working. And he finally said to his growth team, I don't know, let's just try something new. Let's forget about them. Let's take all that energy and focus on the people who actually still love our product. Let's just see what happens. And he said it was transformative. It was transformative because it got them focusing on building the product for the people who loved it and made it even better for them. And you know what? They invited so many more people. They became their biggest brand advocate, and the thing just exploded from there. And so sometimes it's really thinking outside the box. And the way they did it was with tons of experiments and A/B testing and lots of data. And then the last thing I'll mention on it is that a lot of people say that, like when I was at Bebo, which was a social network, we grew from 0 to 30 million people, almost overnight. Like we had a lot of growth hacking that was working. And they're like, how'd you do that? But the truth is there's no one way, right? There's no answer that works for everyone. There are certain things that generally will work, but you have to think about your business and your product and really experiment to be clever about it. Okay, language market fit. And this is probably one that many of you have never thought of or heard of. It's just as important as product market fit, especially when we're talking about consumer startups. So what do I mean by that? I give an example here of a language market fit. You see the iconic like button for Facebook. Now that has been massively successful for them. And when they did this, the icon and the language around it, it was very thoughtful. They spent a lot of time thinking about what to call it and how it should look. And in a consumer software company, everything that you message visually and with words needs to be thoughtful. And I want to really hone on this because if English is not your first language, and if you're a technical founder, this stuff does not come easy to you, right? So get help to do this if it's not something that comes easy to you. Because the companies that we like to invest in, and a lot of the companies that you guys are building, are transformative. You're bringing something new to the world. People don't know how to speak about it. They don't understand what they're supposed to do. It's your job to visually communicate to them in with very few words what it is that they're supposed to do with this new product. It's really hard to do, but if you can do it, it's very, very powerful. And similarly, and connected to that is naming your company. You know, what you call your business, especially on the consumer side, is really important. And I do a lot of naming with our companies. In this case, the founder of Zoom was very technical, and I don't know where he came up with this idea, but he wanted to call Zoom SASP, which was a terrible name. And fortunately, he was willing to be flexible, and I helped him think through. And when we think about naming, we think a lot about what we're trying to build and what word or words we can use that can bring that emotional connection to what we're building, right? And that's really, don't try to describe what you're doing as much as try to bring about an emotion. A great name was, which I love bringing up, is Mint. Mint was a mobile finance app. What does that have to do with Mint? But when you think of Mint, it's like light and easy, and you know, it's the opposite of heavy financial stuff. It's a great name. And same thing with Zoom. We wanted to bring to you this product that really was, you know, gave you high HD quality, fast video conferencing. And this really connoted that, and he loved it, and obviously it's worked well for us. So there's focus, and it's really important for early stage startups to focus. And maybe if I would have to be pushed to think of what's the third most important, this might be it. You know, we see a lot of companies that come in and they say, look, we're B2B and we're B2C. You know, and maybe we're B2B to C too. And so the challenge is, you know, very few companies will ever succeed trying to be both or three things at once. You know, the reality is you have 3 engineers or 2 engineers. How much can you really do? And then the pushback is, well, what do we do? I don't know. Should we be B2C or B2B? And then my answer is, well, sometimes if I think it's a really great B2C idea, I'll say, do B2C and I'll invest, you know. But if I'm not sure, I'll say, well, let's look at these 2 businesses and let me ask you the question, what do you want to do? You know, you're building this for the next 5 to 10 years of your life. What are you passionate about? If you're not really comfortable trying to build a brand to the consumer world, then don't do that. Build an enterprise business using the similar technology and sell to, you know, enterprise. If you don't want to do biz dev partnerships and rely on a third party, then let's try the B2C, right? But if you try and do both, what I will say is you'll most likely fail. So at least give yourself a shot of success and choose one. And if it doesn't work and you made a mistake, hopefully you've had enough time to pivot to the other side and see if that works. And the examples I'm giving here, just briefly, Twitter, by the way, could have been a B2B company. They could have had the API and they could have partnered with all these other big publishers using the Twitter API, never really had the brand out there. I think they made the right choice. They went direct to consumer and built this new product that, you know, many of us are using. And Yammer at the time was a social network trying to compete with Facebook. It wasn't going to work for the consumer, but they realized that nobody was doing that kind of business for the enterprise. So they just completely focused and pivoted into enterprise. Worked for both of them. So, and sometimes there is a time to pivot. So I'm not sure if I had mentioned earlier when I was talking about Zoom, but you know, we started Zoom as direct-to-consumer company, 100%. It was we were trying to compete with Google Hangouts. Right? We wanted to be the group video chat for teenagers on Facebook and you know, Snapchat and all the social networks that we're going to be hanging out in. And so the good news is we built a really simple, easy to use product for kids to use, and it was working like crazy. Now, we weren't making a lot of money. We figured that out later at scale. But the founder was also a founding director of WebEx, and he was from an enterprise background. So he got calls from his former partners and said, look, we love Zoom. We're using it in our office, and we're talking about Fortune 500 companies. But you have to do a few features for us for it to really work. Would you do that? And Eric called me and said, what do you think? I said, listen, it's really your comfort zone, and he's an enterprise guy, and these guys are willing to pay you. So if you're going to do it, just shift 100%. He did, and it was absolutely the right call. And the beautiful thing about the Zoom story is we built such an easy product for consumers that of course the enterprise love it. It's just so much easier to use than the existing WebEx and BlueG network stuff that's out there. And so, and it just works, right? So sometimes the pivot from consumer to enterprise actually is a huge advantage for you. Okay, just a few more slides. We call it mentor whiplash. So let me just say that I think it's really important that early stage startups get great mentors, right? It does take a village to build a billion-dollar company, and you do want people helping you. But I would say that there's a huge caveat, and I'm sure it's the same in Israel like it is in the States. There are successful people like me here in Israel who've done really well, financially successful, and they want to give back. It's awesome. They want to help the community. Now, the problem is they might not be a good mentor for you, right? And if you're building the next Facebook on VR, and someone who built a cybersecurity SaaS enterprise business comes in, who made $100 million, who has no idea anything about consumer or VR, but a pretty impressive guy, you might be tempted to have them help you, right? And they certainly would be excited about learning something new, but they may not be a good fit for your business. Now they might be. I'm not saying he or she might be a good fit, but think about it. What you want are people who've built your kind of business, who've seen the kind of problems you're going to have, because every startup is going to have multiple problems that will potentially kill the company, that can help you avoid those problems or find a solution for those problems. And I think connected to that is finding the right investors. I put this up there to show you the kind of stuff that we do at Maven, but the point is that if you have a consumer software company, you don't want to go to an enterprise investor necessarily. Now, there are people who are generalists, but if they've been doing cybersecurity investing for their whole career, it's going to be hard for them to actually be helpful for you, especially early. I'm talking about seed and Series A investing, right? So think about that. If you could find investors who have built companies like yours, and willing to fund what you're doing, and have a reputation of rolling up their sleeves and being helpful, that's a great investor for you. You've got the mentor and investor wrapped into one, and we think that's one of our huge advantages at Maven. That we're very hands-on with all of our companies, and one of the things that I always point out to our founders, we're not founders, right? It's up to the founders to build the business. It's up to the founders to raise the money and to close the deals, and really, it's the founders who are going to be highly rewarded, and we'll get no complaints, we get our shekels, it's all good. But 80%, 90% of the value goes to the founders, and it should be that way. But we want coachable founders. We want people who are going to listen to us. We want people to be thoughtful. We've seen everything that can go wrong in your early stage consumer or autonomous startup. We know what the problems are going to be. And if you're not willing to listen and think through some of these issues, it's hard for us to invest. So we always look for coachable founders, and I think you should be open-minded to listen to your investors that you trust. Okay, now that you've done all those things, and that's a lot, those 9. So the good news is, if you've done those 9, you are well on your way for massive success. The challenging news is, that's about 20% of the success. And the truth is, and I think you'll hear this from honest entrepreneurs who've been successful and investors, is that 80% of it is really luck and timing, and luck. And I don't mean that to depress you. I actually want to say the truth is that luck will hit all of you if you've done those 9 things. I just want you to keep your eyes open so you'll see that luck when you have the opportunity. And actually would encourage you to be bold and take those steps and take those risks to accept that luck. And one of the examples that I mentioned earlier is Cruise, right? I mean, that pivot was a massive bet the company decision. And you could say, well, boy, you got lucky because look at what happened after. Yeah, 100%. And I agree. Like I said, 80% of it's luck, and the timing. We could have been most people 2 years ago thought that self-driving cars is 50 years from now. So timing had to be right. But we put ourselves to be in a position to be lucky, right? Why? Because we started the company at that time, and we built it, and then we pivoted to software. And so in hindsight, it looks very lucky, and it is, but we took those bold steps to put ourselves in that position. So I'm gonna summarize them quickly, and I'm gonna end with a very quick story about Bebo. And Bebo is a social networking company that's competitive to Friendster, Facebook, MySpace back in the day. And that was the luckiest company I worked for, so I want to tell you a funny, lucky Bebo story. And you can see, happy to share this. We actually have this posted on mavenventures.com and our blog, so everything we're happy to share, all the secrets, because a lot of this really comes down to execution. So this is the formula. Now it's up to you to execute. All right, I'm going to finish on the Bebo story. Okay, so Bebo was a company that was founded 3 or 4 years after Friendster. Does everyone remember Friendster? Friendster was the first social network. All right, I get some Friendster guys. So I was the 4th employee of Friendster. We brought social networking to the world. NPR, which is a public radio station back home, is doing a story on the birth of the social network because. Oh yeah, sure. Leave it up here. It's because it's interesting. If you didn't really know, you would think Facebook started the whole social networking craze, but it actually didn't. Jonathan Abrams started Friendster, which was the first social network, and really should have been the $100 billion idea. Lost for a lot of reasons. I've written a white paper on why Friendster failed and Facebook won. And no sour grapes because I left and helped start Bebo, and that was $1 billion exit, so it's all good. But along the way, it wasn't easy for Bebo. So we were saved many times at Bebo. But there was one time in particular I'm going to talk about. We scaled from zero, like I said, 0 to 30 million customers, and then things looked great. We're about 2 years into it. We started getting calls from large potential partners, partnering, discussions, big revenue dollars coming in. And one day I get in the office, and the site stopped working. Now you have to remember, I was at Friendster for 2 years on a $100 billion idea. And the reason why Friendster failed primarily was because the site stopped working. It took literally minutes to load a page. You can imagine how I was getting tens of thousands of customer emails. We had 15, 20 million people using Friendster, tens of thousands of customer emails a day saying, look, I met my wife on the site and it's not working for me. I'm so frustrated, I'm gonna go to Facebook. I'm gonna go to MySpace. We had an opportunity there. And I thought, that's never gonna happen again. I'm never gonna work for a company or start a company that can't scale. And here it was happening all over again at Bebo. It was unbelievable. And it was an amazing team. So I knew something really bad was happening. Well, it turned out, very quickly, Michael and the team figured out it was an Oracle database issue. So it was great. Okay, so the site's not working, but we know what the problem is. We got we looked at the log, and we knew it was some kind of database. We had no idea how to fix it. But very luckily, I had a senior friend who was on the business side, like a very senior position at Oracle. So I called my friend Doug, and I say, hey, we got a problem. Your database is not working, our site's down. And by the way, we're probably the last company in this business that's still using Oracle. So you need to help us. So he quickly got on it, which was a win-win. And he got in touch with the CTO. They found out that there was one former employee of Oracle who worked in the database division who could fix this. It was amazing. Unbelievable. So lucky. Unfortunately, he moved to the UK. Okay, so we're sitting here in California. He's now in the UK. So we got to figure this out. Okay, so we're making progress here. We go to look him up on the internet, and there was a bunch of people with his name, but it was someone uncommon name, and we found him. We sent an email to all these people randomly. We found him. He said, yeah, that's me. I used to work at Oracle. And we said, great. This is unbelievable. We're going to send you the logs. Can you take a look? He said, yeah, sure, I'll take a look. So we sent it to him. He sends an email back. I took a look. I think I know what the problem. I'm pretty sure I could fix it. And we're like, unbelievable. This is going to happen. But you couldn't afford me and I don't have time anyway. And we're like, are you kidding me? So I got tickets to get on a plane, fly out there to find this guy, convince him he's got to fix this problem for us because otherwise we're out of business. I'm going to the airport. By the way, we're emailing him constantly. He doesn't get back to us. I go to the airport. I'm at the airport, and I get a call from Michael. And he said, Jim, you're not going to believe it. He sent us the logs. He fixed it. He told us how to fix the problem. And we just implemented it. It's working. Unbelievable. So I go back from the airport. Now, it's midnight. I get back in, and we're emailing them. And we said, first of all, thank you so much. And second, what happened? Like, why did you fix it? What changed your mind? So he emails us back, he goes, you'll never believe this. So it was breakfast, and my daughter comes down, she's 18, and she said, Daddy, I can't talk to my friends on Bebo, and the site's down, I'm so frustrated. And so he says, you're not gonna believe it. The guys contacted me and said, could I fix the problem? They sent me the logs, and she said, and? He said, I'm too busy and I'm too expensive. And she said, Daddy, if you don't fix Bebo, I'm leaving the family. Okay, now that's a true story. How lucky is that, okay? I'm telling you, like, I've been through 5 unicorn successes. Every single one of those companies has a story like that, all right? And so my point is here that, yes, you do need the luck and the timing to reach that kind of success. But I can assure you that the talent that's here in Israel, in particular on the engineering side, and now, I spent half a day today at IDC in Herzliya. I'm so impressed with what's going on over there in Tel Aviv. Here at 8200, you have such a great community that's going to help you guys be successful. I would just encourage you, think big. Be that company that's the next Cruise, the next Mobileye that's solving massive problems. Don't think about solving just a little incremental problem. If you do that and you follow those 9 steps, I'm sure that you guys will get lucky too. Thank you very much. Okay, and I just want to put a plug. We're actively tweeting, so follow me on Twitter and sign up for our blog and our newsletter. And I did promise we're going to do some Q&A.